applications and websites, so we thought it would better describe them if they were called engineers versus programmers.
When did you first become interested in programming?
It was probably, well, no, I know it was well before you guys were born, but it was right towards the end of my high school days, so about 15 years ago. Really kind of got into computers, got into understanding what they did and all of that, and then I wanted to kind of get into that as a career opportunity. So I started researching it more and got into programming, and programming clicked with me. It just one of those things that you start doing it, and I'm sure you guys have found some of those things. You start doing something, you're just really good at it. And so that just happened for me, and that's kind of how I got into it, and it's just stuck ever since.
And were there any opportunities in like school early on in for you?
Yeah, absolutely not. I grew up, and you guys might know, in Hayfield, which is not too far from here. We didn't have any programming classes. The only thing we got taught as far as computers was word processing and how to create documents. So there's no programming, there's no nothing like that. So everything I learned before I went to college to do this was all on my own, all stuff I just taught myself.
Did you have what was it that even got you, like, how did you discover it? Do you remember at all?
It just came down to, I was starting to think about what I wanted to do for a career, starting to look forward in my life, and computers really interested me because we had computers everywhere. You know, they weren't as powerful as the ones you guys get to use, but they were everywhere, and I liked using them, like building them, but then really it came down to, do I want to spend my entire life building computers, or do I want to spend my life building new applications and new things for computers? And so it really came down to, I wanted to start programming because I could create my own thing when I programmed.
How did you learn to program? So I guess
Yeah, so obviously I started teaching myself a little bit, but most of my knowledge actually came in college for a little while, but most of it actually come after I got out of college and started in the career, because then I was diving headfirst, and that's what I was doing every day. Coding's one of those things you never stop learning. So you can take as many classes as you want, but those classes only take you so far. Once you start actually creating programs and doing work, you just learn so much more, and then it's always changing. So this is kind of a long-winded answer to this, but really, you never stop learning when you're programming. So you're always learning new things, you're always moving forward, and there's always something new that somebody creates that you can use for something else. So you're always learning.
Do you consider your coding ability to be a superpower?
Yes, I do, because really I can change anything in the world around me. I can change anything that I need to do, anything that I need, I can create with my coding abilities. And so I can change how my life is enhanced, improved, what I do on a day-to-day basis by my programming skills.
What is the coolest thing you've been able to use your coding powers on? And I'll add on to that, or even, cool things that not only you've been able to use it on, but you've seen other people use it on too.
Well, I think coding is becoming a large part of our lives. For me, I don't have an extravagant answer to this, but every day I get to code on something new, something different. When I was in college, I got to code a computer game, and a simple computer game. We just did a chess game, but we did a little fun things, like when a chess piece was taken by the other team, instead of it just moving off the board, it would explode into a lot of little pieces. It was kind of fun little things you can do. But I think from a standpoint of what I think they're coolest things that I've seen come out, and some things you probably don't even quite think that it's programmers behind it, but there's right now car companies are creating self-driving cars. Cars that nobody has to, you don't have to be behind, you don't have to be steering, you don't have to be touching the gas pedal, brake pedal, does it all for you. That's all because programmers have the ability to take a bunch of information that they're getting from the car and make sure the car is safe at all times and be able to drive down the road. And so I think it's really cool, some of these applications we're able to do, and it, like I said earlier, it's always growing. So there's always gonna be something new that comes along that they're doing.
How has learning how to program or code changed how you look at the world? Okay.
I look at the world as there is no problem that can't be solved anymore. Before, there was always so many problems that you just never knew how you could solve them. Now there seems to be a way we can solve anything. Whether that comes down to even as major issues as world hunger, there's things that we can do to solve those types of things. And so I think from my standpoint, my view on the world is with programming, with the stuff, the technology we're using nowadays and what we will use in the future, I don't think any problem is too big for us to solve.
What is one important thing kids should think about as they learn to program?
I think the most difficult thing with programming is the failures. On a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis, something's gonna fail when you're programming. Something's always failing, something's always not working like you expect it to. But the best programmers learn how to take and figure out why it failed and make them a better programmer because they know that now. And so the biggest thing is to never get frustrated with something failing. Failing gives you an opportunity to learn from what's happening and then get better at what you're doing. So.
Do you guys have questions?
Yeah.
Back to the whole self-driving car thing. If like the car was about to hit a person, would it protect the driver, the person that's in front of it, or the people on the sidewalk?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's actually a very big philosophical question around self-driving cars right now. And this is part of the reason why they're not out there as a major opportunity right now, because they still have to figure those questions out. I know there is some self-piloting cars. I know Tesla is a motor company that has autopilot feature on their car, but you still have to be behind the wheel. There has to be somebody there so that they can make those decisions. And so the self-piloting cars, they won't be available until those decisions can be made at a consistent basis. And at that point, you start getting into a lot of morals, and that I don't think we need to get into.
So did you take computers apart and then put them all back together?
Yeah, I did. That kind of got me interested in everything. When I was in high school, I started looking at computers. My mom would bring home computers that their company was done working. I just started taking them apart, putting things back together, and trying to upgrade different computers. It kind of got me interested in the whole computer landscape. But then once I got to a point where the technology, I couldn't go any further than what the technology gave me. I figured programming was better for me because I wanted to be looking towards the future, not being constricted by what I had in front of me.
Do you think it still helped you though in knowing how computers work? Like, does that help people, or does it not make it that big of a difference?
I think it's important for you to understand because as much as you can think forward in your programming, you still are restricted by the amount of things that a computer can do in a certain standpoint. So it does help understanding how computers work and how you know, if you're doing this one thing, what different resources it's going to pull from, and how the computer is going to hold up to that. But you can end up learning that just from coding as well. So it's, you know, 6 on one, half dozen another. You can learn it or you can't. I don't think it seems to have an effect on everyone.
Right, sure. Other questions? Anybody else have a question at all? Ray? You said that you're constantly learning still now. How do you learn, besides just trying different things, what are other things that you do to keep your learning going when it comes to coding?
So when we can run into problems, we run into problems every day. And so when those learning opportunities we have, we typically are looking at we're Googling a lot of stuff. So we're Googling what our problem is, ways to solve those problems, and then finding different solutions. There's so many websites out there that have solutions, whether it's a forum where a bunch of programmers are on there answering questions from other programmers, or there's different websites. One of my favorite websites is W3 Schools, and it really teaches you a lot about HTML, JavaScript, the website type of programming. But there's also so many other ones for different types of programming out there as well.
When you're coding and working on projects, do you typically work by yourself or do you work with other people?
That's a great question. So it's kind of a combination. So there's projects in which it makes more sense for one person to be able to just get in, work on it, and move on. But then there's also times when you have a larger project, you want a bunch of different people working on it. The only thing that we do differently now is you don't typically have people working on the same problem. You have people working on different problems for the same solution at the end, and so you do kind of work together. And then from the nice thing that we have over in our office is we have a very open concept. It's kind of like this classroom. It's completely wide open. We're all sitting right next to each other, so if we're having troubles figuring out something, we have another person or 2 other people that we can ask a question to and get those solved.
Oh, so you work like with games like Minecraft and all them?
We don't I don't. We don't over at our company either. We work with websites over there. So we're really kind of focused on websites and how you use the web. But we don't really deal with games as much, but that doesn't mean that it's not available to people around here either. I mean, I know people who are just creating apps for phones, game apps for phones, out of their basement. You can do any of that stuff from wherever you're at, which is also another thing about programming. You don't have to be in a certain spot to be able to do some of these things. You can do it from wherever you have an internet connection, or even if you don't have an internet connection, you can code and have it working on your computer, and then work towards uploading it to a server if you need to.
Okay, any other questions at all? And just so you know, so what they're gonna keep coming once a month, and then they'll be able to help with the groups that are working with the ASBOTs. And they have, because they've worked so much in coding, they have lots of resources and ideas and things like that. So that's one of the things. And even today, when you guys are getting on to code.org, he'll be here still walking around. So if you have a question or you need help, he'll be able to help you with that too. Okay, any other questions? All right, what do we say for him coming in and answering those questions?